All right, so Jon Jones in the news again, like he's back in his prime. So we wake up and the first thing we see is just a simple report that just comes out and says, Jon Jones threatens drug tester. That's it. Doesn't really give us any more context. It just says Jon Jones threatens the life of a drug tester. And immediately it's like, what the hell is going on? You're thinking the old Jon Jones is back. Oh my God, the drama again. Here we go. Yada, yada, yada. But there's not much context. There's no details yet. A lot of people jump the gun and they're just like, blah, 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 blah. And to me, I'm thinking, what's the context? What happened? I'm questioning what's going on. Then we get two things. Jon Jones responding to this report, and then we get the actual report itself with the alleged victim. So according to the police report, the woman Crystal and this guy named Jerome from Drug Free Sport go into Jon Jones' house around 4 p.m. So apparently everything's fine at first. Jon Jones comes out. He says, okay, we'll do the test in the garage. So Crystal apparently leaves, and then Jerome and Jon Jones are together. Then Crystal's waiting, and some time goes by, and she goes back to the garage, and they're both gone. Then Jon Jones and Jerome come back out, and this is where Crystal said Jerome, her partner, seemed a little distraught. And it was because Jones apparently could not pee. Then Crystal suggested, okay, maybe we do a blood test. And that's where apparently Jones got agitated. And then he said, I'm going to sue you guys. I hope you guys have money. And then takes Crystal's phone. According to the report, it says in the video, Jon says something along the lines of, here's Jerome and his girlfriend in my garage. And then the video cuts off. And this is where it gets more serious. Jones is now refusing to give the phone back to Crystal and then saying, why are you guys coming to my place so early? And I'm thinking, wait, it's 4 p.m. Why would you think it's so early? Unless maybe he is intoxicated. Maybe he is drunk, right? Or was drunk the night before. So maybe that's why 4 p.m. seems early to him at this time. But 4 p.m. is still like, that's not early. And then he apparently says, do you know what happens to people when they come to my house? They end up dead. Then, of course, Crystal says that she's terrified. She's scared. She doesn't know what's going to happen. And she's very close to Jon Jones in proximity. And to be fair, if you're like really close to an angry Jon Jones, even if he's not angry at you, you might be a little scared. It's Jon Jones. He's huge. And the thing with this quote is it could be taken out of context. Maybe he said something, not those exact words. So maybe the way she, heard it and it was described to her felt a lot more threatening than maybe Jon Jones thought it was, because he didn't think it was that threatening. The things that he said he was agitated and frustrated, but he didn't say it was threatening. He has an intense dog and could be possibly facing intruders because, he's Jon Jones. People want to go into his house. Maybe people want to rob him or etc. Right? You never know. So maybe he was referencing that, like you just barging in here. I don't know. Right? It could come from a frustrating place. Doesn't necessarily mean that he intended to threaten her, but she took it as a threat because, obviously it sounds pretty bad if that's actually what he said. And there seems to be a disconnect between what Jones thinks that he said and then what she thinks that she heard. Then she's thinking about scrapping the whole thing, but of course she doesn't want to because that would make things even worse, because if you miss a test or can't do a test when they arrive, you can get penalized for that. And if Jon Jones is possibly going to get penalized, he might get more angry. So she doesn't want to escalate the situation, which is understandable. But specifically, she said she was afraid Jones would hit her if she said or suggested to scrape the whole thing. And now we're getting into, I'm afraid he might do something if I say this, which I don't think is completely fair, because it's like, okay, but what did he actually do? Not what you think he might have done if you said blank thing, right? And Crystal, maybe all she knows about Jon Jones is these stories and is these things. So as soon as he gets angry or says some things, her mind might, even though he might not mean it in a certain way, her mind just might switch into that, oh, I saw this thing online and this, and all these stories start piling up. So you think that's going to happen to you. Crystal clarified that Jerome could not call for help either, since he had given his phone to his girlfriend earlier. So now two people don't have their phone. I don't know why Jerome's phone is with his girlfriend, but that's the case. They both don't have no phone. And now they feel stuck, which is understandable. So then eventually Jones agrees to do the test. He puts the phone back, and then Crystal can get her phone, and then Jones and Jerome go off to do the test again. So now Crystal gets her phone back. She's trying to text her boss, and apparently she's afraid to be on the phone with her boss, because if Jones apparently sees her with the phone, she's afraid that he's going to attack her. And again, it's her saying she's afraid he's going to do something. Based on, he said one sentence, and then that sentence was the catalyst and his frustration for her assuming things might happen. So a lot of it is her perception, which is creating her fear of what might actually happen. But in reality, at this point, he didn't do anything yet other than, say those words that she took as a threat. And, I guess I would take it as a threat too, to be honest. So then Jones and Jerome come back, and apparently in her perspective, Jerome looks pale and nervous. And Jerome hasn't, said anything about this specifically, so we don't really know how Jerome was actually feeling. It's her perspective of Jerome feeling, scared and nervous. Crystal stated Jerome started to pack and seal the urine so they could get out of there, but he kept making mistakes, which she believed was because he was nervous. Again, maybe he was nervous, maybe he wasn't. This is just Crystal's perspective of Jerome's feelings, which you don't actually know. She believed Jones might have been drunk because she smelled an odor of alcohol beverage coming from him. And this is possible. You know, Jones could have been drinking, or maybe was drinking the night before. That's why maybe he thought 4 p.m. was early. So now they get out, and Crystal says that once she left, she did an internal report for her boss, but also informed him she was going to do a police report. And he told her to hold off until UFC representatives spoke with her, and that Jerome told her he did not want to file one because he was afraid of the repercussions. So apparently Jerome doesn't want to say anything, and he's going to stay silent because he doesn't want to deal with any backlash. As we see, Crystal's already dealing with people are saying, you're just money hungry, you're just this, you're just that. They're going at Crystal, right? So it's understandable Jerome wouldn't want to deal with this if something did happen and he just wants to be out of it. But what's interesting is her boss is being like, yo, wait for the UFC to come talk to you to maybe, you know, work something out. And that's what's weird to me. It's like, why wait? What would the UFC say other than like, hey, can you, like, you know, he didn't mean in this, like maybe just trying to defend him, right? So that to me is weird. Like the boss is trying to tell you to wait for the UFC to come talk to you as if that'll change your experience. So that's a little weird. Then Crystal gets contacted again by her boss asking why she wants to file the report, and makes it seem that he's pretty much trying to talk her out of it. You know, they don't want to make the, you know, anything around the UFC look worse, right? But then it makes you question, okay, if this was USADA days, you know, they wouldn't really care. They might go at the UFC, especially with their relationship now. So it's understandable and would make sense if the bosses from her company didn't want any trouble with this newfound relationship that they just made, and they would talk her out of it. So then Jon Jones posts a video on Instagram with a statement talking about these allegations. The main thing you want to clarify is that the situation ended amicably. They were all good afterwards. There was frustration on his part and profanity used, but nothing threatening. So this is where things kind of go head to head on. He probably said some stuff out of frustration, and she took it as a threat. He might not maybe fully remember what it was. Maybe he didn't perceive what he was saying as threatening, and she did. And that's where you have the misalignment there. But then he says the tester behaved unprofessionally and even breached standard protocol along with HIPAA laws. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what he's talking about there. I don't know what's going on. Then he pulls the thing of like, throughout my 20 years of being subjected to drug tests, I've never encountered such an incident with a DCO officer before. So now it's like, okay, what happened that's not in the report? Because the report is from their side. So what happened in between those moments? Maybe it was with Jerome, the guy who was actually with Jon Jones in the tests, right? And maybe she felt the brunt of his frustration, but maybe it was with the guy who was with Jon Jones during those tests. So the first thing on Jon Jones' side, from the report, he was apparently saying, I can't believe you guys came this early when it was 4 p.m. Right? So that probably leads you to believe he was drinking the night before or was partying. He said it was a friend's birthday that day, so he was celebrating. Maybe that's why. He had a late night and then woke up, and then they had the party right away, and then they just show up. He's like, bro, come on. Maybe it was one of those. Then the second part is she's referencing the possibility of things that could happen a lot, and she's assuming the feelings of her partner, which aren't confirmed, at least on paper, right? So there's a lot of stuff up in the air there. Then there's stuff that could have happened during the testing that the person who's filing the report wasn't there for, that led to Jon Jones' frustration. So the video is really just her high-fiving Jon Jones and then him kind of like patting the guy on the back, right? But that doesn't really prove anything. I see a lot of people being like, oh, see, nothing happened. See, it was all good. It was all good. It's very possible that she just wanted to get out of there and just wanted to de-escalate the situation as much as possible because she noticed how mad he was and didn't want anything to happen. So she goes for the high five. Okay, we're all good. Let me get out of here. Boom. So that video just shows that they were all good afterwards, but it doesn't take away from the possibility that a lot of inappropriate stuff happened when they were in the house. For me, there's still a lot of unanswered questions as to what actually happened. And, you know, a lot of it was her perspective, but what about his perspective, right? And then on both sides, right? It would be great to hear from the other guy, but I can understand why he wouldn't want to talk right now because look at how much backlash she's getting. So Jon Jones' video doesn't really take anything away from her report or prove anything per se. And if it's true that the bosses are trying to get her to not make this report, that's a really bad sign. Because why is the doping agency trying to protect the UFC? Right? Because they care about that relationship. For me, it could be a mix of them being the new doping agency, them not doing things the same way as, you know, Jon Jones is used to. Maybe they were unprofessional in some ways, and he's just getting frustrated and kind of let it out in a way that this person felt really threatened by, but maybe on his perspective, it wasn't that way. So now there's a misalignment, miscommunication. it could be both ways in that sense. So maybe both parties are kind of true. Maybe she did feel threatened, but he didn't mean to threaten them. And then it's like, okay, so what do we do now? And in terms of what to do next or consequences, there's still so many unanswered questions. So what do you do? I don't know. The UFC does have time on their side because Jon Jones isn't fighting anytime soon. So they don't need to take action right away. They can kind of wait and see how this plays out and see if things develop more. If he was headlining like 300, then there would be a lot more pressure to do something. Because like, yo, this is allegations going on, like back and forth. That could be a problem. But they have time for things to develop and deal with this amicably. I've seen people say, look, just strip him at this point. He's been gone for so long anyways. Just give it to Aspinall. Let's go. And then I've seen people say, no, nothing happened. He's all good. Let's just keep on keeping on, right? And I don't really know what to make of it at this point right now, to be honest. Let me know what you guys think about the whole situation and what to do with Jon Jones and the doping agency.